Hello, this is Judy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the May 18th, 2026 issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. I will do my best to pronounce all names and words correctly, yet please forgive me if I do not. And here is our first article. It's a Star investigation, and the title is Internal Documents Cast Doubt on Officials' Claims That Most Canadian Veterans Are Improving Under Controversial Rehab Program. Veterans Affairs Canada excluded survey results from hundreds of veterans whose conditions worsened or failed to improve. And this article is written by Frederic Plante, Plante, who is an investigative reporter. Surveys touted by federal officials as evidence of success for Veterans Affairs Canada's controversial rehabilitation program excluded hundreds of veterans whose conditions worsened or failed to improve, records obtained by the Toronto Star show. The records, obtained through an access to information request, cast doubt on the officials' repeated claims that the vast majority of veterans improve under the program. A recent Star investigation found that veterans undergoing rehabilitation are drowning in bureaucracy, being forced to change service providers, given inadequate care, and facing threats to their benefits. Veterans said their health worsened as a result. Minister of Veterans Affairs Jill McKnight said her department would launch an independent review of the $573 million program and the for-profit company running it. But VAC officials also defended the program, pointing the Star and the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs to the results of surveys filled out by participants undergoing rehabilitation. One survey, they claim, found that 82% of them reported improved life satisfaction. However, internal records show that hundreds of participants were excluded from the analysis to reach this number. The full breakdown reveals that 677 out of 1,200 surveyed participants, only 56.4%, not 82, reported improved life satisfaction, while 439, 36.6%, got worse during their time in the rehab program. 84 stayed the same. VAC also claimed that 74% of survey participants reported improved functional capacity or improved overall health and well-being. Here, too, records showed that hundreds of respondents were excluded from the analysis. The full picture shows that only 543 out of 1,248 surveyed participants, or 43.5%, not 74, reported an improvement. It is unclear how many participants stayed the same or got worse. The results for this metric were derived from two questionnaires combined together and presented in a way that renders interpretation difficult. VAC did not answer questions about the full breakdown. Pamela Harrison, VAC's Acting Director General of Service Delivery and Program Management, said the analysis was limited to participants who completed the assessment twice and therefore had sufficient comparable data. This explanation is inconsistent with VAC's own records, showing that many participants who were assessed twice reported stable or deteriorating results and were excluded from the analysis. After the Star asked about this contradiction, VAC spokesperson Josh Brueckert, and that's Bueckert, said Harrison's characterization was a mistake. All participants were assessed at least twice, he said, but the analysis only included those who were assessed a third time, as well as those who achieved their rehabilitation goals. The ones who've been removed are people who removed themselves from the program or were removed from the program for a variety of reasons, Brueckert said, declining to give any specific reason. The reason they take those other people out is because having the data doesn't help evaluate the program. The Star asked Bruckert why all participants who got better were assessed a third time and included in the analysis, while hundreds of others were excluded. "I don't know," he said. Blake Richards, a conservative MP and vice chair of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, said he is disappointed that the Minister of Veterans Affairs and her officials would deliberately mislead Canadians and veterans. The Liberal government are just duplicating bureaucracy and delays, restricting veterans' choices for service providers, and placing undue stress on the veterans they are supposed to be helping, Richards said. The company contracted by Ottawa to run its national rehabilitation program is called Partners in Canadian Veterans Rehabilitation Services, PCVRS. Company executives also touted the survey results as evidence of success when they testified to the committee in March. PCVRS is a joint venture between Lifemark Health Group, a North York-based network of clinics owned by Loblaw Companies Limited, and WCG Services, a subsidiary of Australian corporation APM Human Services International. APM, in turn, is owned since 2024 by U.S. private equity firm Madison Dearborn Partners. PCVRS declined to comment and referred questions to VAC. The records obtained by the Star also show that fewer than 1 in 5 participants achieved their rehabilitation goals. About 2/3 of participants left the program because further intervention would not be effective in supporting them to achieve their goals. This includes both individuals who improved and failed to improve, according to VAC. Healthcare professionals and academics who reviewed VAC records for the Star said little could be inferred from the survey results given their limitations. "That doesn't make sense," Nancy Reed, a professor of statistics at University of Toronto, said of the analysis. "By leaving out participants, they've biased the results," she said. Dr. James Brophy, a professor of medicine and epidemiology at McGill University, said the main issue with VAC's reported success rate is that it only includes people who were still around to be measured. The exclusion of participants from the results is possibly creating a selection bias, and in programs like this, those people not responding often do worse, Brophy said. The company and government's strong claims about effectiveness aren't justified. Dr. Angela Malice, Mailis, an Ontario pain and rehabilitation specialist, said the records show questionable sampling, a failure to address attrition, and poor transparency. These flaws cannot allow me to consider that the reported findings constitute strong evidence of overall program effectiveness, Malice said. In a report on suicide prevention published in April, the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs found that the fragmentation of services between the Canadian Armed Forces, VAC, and PCVRS undermines continuity of care by forcing veterans to repeatedly describe their trauma, which can needlessly re-traumatize them and compromise their healing. More than a month after Minister McKnight's announcement, VAC has yet to share any details about the upcoming review of PCVRS and the rehabilitation program. VAC spokesperson Marc Lescoutre, and that's Lescoutre, said in late April that the department is currently evaluating options. And Frederic Plante is a Toronto-based investigative reporter for The Star. You can reach him at his email, which is FPLANTE@THESTAR.ca. This next article is under GTA, and the title is "This Ontario Grade 12 Credit Could Make the Difference for University Admission: How Students Are Trying to Get a Leg Up in an Ultra-Competitive Course." Brushing off English ENG4U is not an option for university hopefuls. Many are using alternative ways to take it and try to boost marks. Is the system working? And this article is written by Janet Hurley, who is a senior writer. Farhan has a mind for math and science. This term, the grade 11 student is averaging 98 and 95% respectively. He's no slouch in English either. He's sitting at 93. Still, English has him worried, especially looking ahead to grade 12 when it could potentially drag down his overall average. It's not his favorite subject, nor his best. He's not even sure how it will help with a career in medicine. But brushing off grade 12 university preparation English, and that's ENG4U, is not an option for post-secondary hopefuls. With 98,360 students enrolled, it's the most popular grade 12 course in the province. It also serves as a kind of equalizer. With few exceptions, universities calculate it as part of the student's top 6 admissions average. For Farhan, who has his eye on programs where a percentage point can make a difference between an offer or rejection, his worry isn't whether he'll do well in ENG4U, but whether well will be enough. That anxiety is echoed in online forums where students debate whether to take or retake ENG4U in summer school, night school, online, or through private credit options. Each pathway weighed for its potential to boost final grades. ENG4U is the biggest academic gamble if you take it normally, concludes one commenter. And despite concerns about how alternatives may affect university applications, students appear willing to take the risk. In Ontario's public and Catholic systems, online ENG4U enrollment has surged 333% over the past decade, even as the grade 12 population has slightly declined. Alternative providers such as Blythe Academy say ENG4U is one of their most popular grade 12 offerings, particularly in summer, while TVO ILC says ENG4U enrollment has risen 20 to 25% annually since 2022 to 2023. After weighing his options, Farhan, whose last name was withheld out of concern it could affect his post-secondary prospects, has opted to take it this July through a free online asynchronous course offered by his board. The Vaughan student says the condensed format, nearly a week's course load in one day, will help him focus, and finishing English early will make fall more enjoyable. But there was another persuasive factor. People say it's easier to get a high mark in summer school, he said, before pausing. I don't know how true that is. Why 100% in English is hard? When teacher Kathy Coelho, and that's Coelho, began noticing fewer students in ENG4U classes in her Mississauga school, she began to wonder, where did they all go? What she discovered was they were getting the credit elsewhere, at summer school or online, either through the board or private academics, where an ENG4U course can cost $600. These kids are under pressure to get the highest marks they can, said Coelho, an English department head who has taught the subject for 31 years. It's in their top 6. They know English counts. So they're doing what a smart person would do, which is pick the easiest option in their busy lives in order to get through. In addition to equity issues, Coelho questions the rigor and oversight of non-day school options, particularly online learning, given the rise of AI and the challenge of verifying who is actually completing the work. She argues ENG4U is not a course where students can simply pull it together in grade 12 and significantly boost their average, given how scaffolded the subject is over years of language acquisition. Ontario's grade 12 curriculum, updated in 2007, is about reading critically, writing reflectively, understanding deeply, and communicating effectively, says Lorenzo Cherubini, and that's Cherubini, a Brock University professor in English education. These skills require sophisticated development. Where once high school seniors might have just memorized passages from Hamlet, today's students focus on analyzing texts and finding connections to their own lives and the wider world. The goal, Coho explains, is to show these aren't just the words of some dude sitting with a quill 400 years ago, but ideas still playing out today. Yet, for students, that very shift towards interpretation and personal voice can, despite clear curriculum rubrics, make grading seem arbitrary. If I'm getting a low mark in science or math, says Farhan, it's because I studied less. With English, I can work very hard but get a low mark because it's about the mindset. It's not very objective. He's going to aim for 100% but settle for 97.5%. Toronto's top scholars routinely score perfect in English, but that means a student has demonstrated flawless communication, innovation, and creative expressions, said Coho, standards she believes few can truly reach, especially amid declining reading and writing habits. And even as grade 12 averages rise, high-achieving Ontario students report gaps in basic academic skills. An 80 used to be such a great mark that the provincial government gave you a check and a certificate, and now students are upset with an 80, says Coho. That feeds a cycle that is really messed up. Can English be fast-tracked? When Elaine entered her final year of high school last fall, she wasn't sure about getting an 80 in ENG 4U was even possible. Her teacher was known as a hard marker. I worried that I wouldn't meet the requirements or have a competitive average to get into the university I wanted, says the Markham teen, who typically scores 99 in math and wants to study computer science at Waterloo. Elaine, whose last name was withheld while she fields offers, considered dropping out, maybe taking again elsewhere. Friends had already opted for online or summer school. You can get a higher mark, she says, because of how fast-paced the course is. The assignments tend to be easier. Day school alternatives, especially those structured around asynchronous models, may not be formally condensed, but tend to be marketed that way. The Ontario Virtual School, which did not respond to the STARS question, both students can upgrade courses in as little as 4 weeks with a 98% post-secondary acceptance rate. Such options can meet curriculum expectation, said Brock's Cherubini, but he warns that condensed and asynchronous formats are not ideal for developing higher order thinking needed for university. The full writing process, from brainstorming and drafting to feedback and revising, as well as proper assessment of that, requires time and sustained interaction with the teacher, he argues. That said, alternative schools say outcomes depend less on format than learning conditions. Blythe spokesperson Sarah A. Coles explains while students, generally speaking, do see an improvement in their grades, she attributes it to the Academy's small classes, engaging teachers, strong communication, and focusing on one course at a time. Researcher Sierra Khoramshahi, and that's Khoramshahi, a PhD candidate at OISE studying post-secondary access, cautions that condensed course formats are not as easy as they sound, and she believes repeating a course, if needed, can strengthen learning. If you do things better the second time, then I think that's effective. But students worry that this could mean on their transcripts and to their chances of admission. How different schools treat ENG 4U. And the Star asks some of Ontario's top universities how they assess grade 12 university preparation English, which is ENG4U, when it comes to admission requirements, including whether it matters if a student repeats the course for a better grade. The schools they asked were U of T, McMaster, Queens, Western, and Waterloo, and all require that course, and each with a minimum grade varies according to the universities. What about university admissions? Ontario universities told the Star that while some programs set minimum thresholds for ENG4U, a mark in the 70s is typically sufficient, though not necessarily competitive. Many consider the highest mark from a repeated attempt and most generally treat any Ministry of Education accredited ENG4U course equally regardless of format. However, there is some nuance. The University of Waterloo, for example, advises engineering and mathematics applicants to avoid repeating courses or taking them outside of a regular school day if possible, noting admissions wants to see how students perform while balancing a full course load and extracurricular commitments. Why ENG4U matters. That caution is what ultimately convinced Elaine to stick it out even as she risked dropping to 79. I underestimated how hard it would be, she says. When final report cards arrived in February, Elaine scored 84 in ENG4U, well above the course median of 70. I think I did pretty well, she said, relieved to already have some university offers in hand, even if she feels she wasn't on equal footing with other applicants. Some schools are just prone to grade inflation. I don't have any control over it. Ideally, we would be a fair world, but life isn't ideal. Students generally agree ENG4U should be required, but would prefer it count in admission averages only if it is a top mark. Meanwhile, educators say a partial fix would be for universities to require ENG4U be taken in day school, at least on first attempt, reducing the incentive for grade shopping. In any case, the skills learned in ENG4U are integral to any post-secondary success, says Coho, be it in the humanities or engineering. If you have the most brilliant idea in the world, but you can't communicate it, then it stays in your head. And Janet Hurley is a Toronto-based journalist and senior writer covering culture, education, and societal trends. Her email is jhurley@THESTAR.ca. Our next article is Underworld, and the title is Americas. Unwanted lab rats find new homes and are adopted thanks to an Argentine organization. And this is in Buenos Aires, Argentina. A group of people watched 3 albino rats leap from small baskets into a big cage on Sunday as other rodents hid in makeshift tunnels or searched for applesauce offered by their keeper through the bars at an indoor hall in the Argentine capital. And this article is written by Amunda Calatrava, and that's Almudea, and it's Calatrava, and Natasha, and that's Pisarenko, and that's Natachapisarenko of the Associated Press. A group of people watched 3 albino rats leap from small baskets into a big cage Sunday as other rodents hid in makeshift tunnels or searched for applesauce offered by their keeper through bars at an indoor hall in the Argentine capital. It's Repolauza, an annual Buenos Aires event that promotes the adoption of rodents raised in animal facilities or used for research and science labs. Once the animals are no longer useful, have outlived their purpose, or just surplus stock. To attract adoptive families, Team Ratas, and that's Ratas, which is Spanish for rats, organizes events such as Ratapalooza. In Argentina, keeping rats or mice as pets is perfectly legal as long as they are not wild. The whole thing turns into something of a fair, complete with stalls selling keychains, mugs, stickers, and hair clips in the shape of rats and mice. The money raised goes to veterinarian food expenses for the rodents, which they foster at home before putting them up for adoption. At one of the stands, Maria Gabriela Aponte held Camaberto, and that's Camamberto, one of the 3 rats she has adopted, as she sold vegan food, mouse-shaped pins, and stickers. All of them, she said, were raised in labs in what is called a vivarium, where laboratory rats are kept under strictly controlled conditions. People don't really know, or they have a very specific perception of, what a pet is, Aponte told the Associated Press. Rats are very intelligent and sweet. Dominique Verdier, Verdier, who represents Team Ratas, says those interested in adopting rodents must have access to a veterinarian specialized in exotic animals, a spacious cage with lots of accessories for their entertainment, and devote at least 1 hour a day to quality time spent with their adoptees. A growing network in Argentina. Team Ratas is a leader in Argentina and Latin America for rehoming lab rats and mice that, without a foster home, would otherwise be euthanized. The initiative started in 2016 when Verdier adopted 2 rats after a friend told her the university where they were being used for research no longer needed them. She set up a rodent rescue network with 90 foster homes in Buenos Aires and nearby towns, housing hundreds of animals from 11 animal facilities and labs. In the last 10 years, she has rescued more than 8,000 animals and found homes for approximately 3,000. Her organization has more than 60,000 followers on Instagram. Rodents get an unfair, bad rap. Proximity to rats and mice, and rodents in general, may be raising concerns amid the ongoing deadly hantavirus outbreak on the ill-fated Atlantic cruise ship, MV Honduras, after the ship stopped in Argentina earlier this month. Hantavirus is usually spread by breathing in droppings of contaminated wild rodents, which usually live in Patagonia in southern Argentina. Verdier, who fosters most of the 37 rodents at her home, stresses that lab rats are perfectly healthy. They do not transmit diseases because they have not had contact with the street, nor are they inoculated with viruses and bacteria, she said. The labs that have been supplying Team Ratas for years only provide animals that have not been infected with any viruses or bacteria. Several laboratories prefer to euthanize the animal, while others tell me, "Take them away, we don't want to sacrifice them," she added. Veterinarian Silvina Diaz at the University of Buenos Aires studies the nervous system of rats and mice at an experimentation laboratory. She supports having the rodents find a new home once their lab careers are over. It is great that they're doing this work of rehoming animals in families that can give them a good life, says Diaz, who acts as a liaison between vet technicians and Team Ratas. Verdier, who insists she will keep finding new homes for the little furry creatures, says she is used to the criticism she gets on social media. If people see a dog shelter, they might admire it, but when I mention Ratapalooza, they say, "What you're doing is silly," she said. And I say, "I've been doing this for 10 years and it keeps growing." And this article is written by the Associated Press. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article is under sports, and it's an opinion article, and it's about lacrosse. And the title is Toronto Rock are NLL champions once again. They have some rookies to thank. And this article is written by Scott Radley, who's a columnist with the Hamilton Spectator, focusing on sports and politics. You can reach him at his email, which is SRADLEY @THESPEC.com. Among the crush of bodies celebrating the Toronto Rock's National Lacrosse League Championship on Sunday night in Halifax were 5 guys who weren't even in the league last year. If you want to know why the Hamilton-based franchise beat the Thunderbirds 12-7 to sweep the best-of-3 final and climb to the top of the lacrosse world for the first time since 2011, you can find your answer here. It's the rookies. C.J. Kirst was named League Rookie of the Year a few days ago. He's already a star. Sam English joined him in that category when he was named final MVP on Sunday. He's the first rookie to ever earn that honor. Then throw in Owen Hiltz, H-I-L-T-Z, Hugh Kelleher, and that's Kelleher, and Lucas Hucal, Hucal, who were all tremendous through the playoffs, and you've got a quintet of freshmen that make the difference. Still, a title in their first year? Unbelievable, English said. I can't believe it. It's special. Of course, it wasn't all about the rookies. Veterans such as Captain Challen Rogers and Mark Matthews had a huge impact. Chris Boschley, Boushhy, had a hat trick in this one and finished the postseason with 8 goals. And Nick Rose was big in the net. The 38-year-old finally got his championship after 16 years in the league. I'm so jealous of those guys winning it in their first year, he said. But they re-energized this group, and they're the huge reason why we got this done. It's true. This was a game and a series, and frankly, an entire playoff season defined by the newcomers. In Game 1, rookies scored 8 of the Rock's 13 goals, led by 4 in a row from Kirst. On Sunday, they were responsible for 7 of the team's 12 markers. The Toronto Rock? Try the Toronto Rook. It's worth remembering that a year ago, this team didn't make the playoffs. That's how quickly things have changed. Point to some excellent work at the draft for this. Team owner and general manager Jamie Dawick, D-A-W-I-C-K, who somehow wasn't chosen GM of the year, took English in the first round last year, though the 25-year-old didn't join the squad until the season. Kirst and Hiltz were grabbed in the first round this year, with Kelleher being added in the second. Hucal was then signed as a rookie free agent. All 5 scored on Sunday. It all led to a spectacular bounce-back season for a franchise that used to win titles all the time. Between 1999 and 2011, it won 6 NLL Cups. Since then, the well has been dry. After a decent regular season this time, it found its form at the right time. During the postseason, when defenses tend to tighten up, the Rock increased their scoring from 10.8 goals per game to 12.3 goals per game, while keeping their goals against exactly the same. So much of that was driven by the rookies. Kirst, English, and Hiltz especially went from being good first-year players to guys who are likely going to concern other teams for years to come. Even wilder is the fact that the Rock have the 4th pick in this year's draft, which they picked up in a trade with Calgary, and English's brother Ty, who was the 2nd pick last year, spent the year in college but could join the roster next season, which could make this team that's contending for titles for a while. Which could make this a team that's contending for titles for a while. We've always come short, said Rogers, who was in his 9th season on the team. Just to get over the hump with those guys and just the trials and tribulations we've had throughout the seasons. We're champions and no one can take that away from us. We'll have that forever. Our next article is under health, and it's 9 surprising habit changes that could prevent or delay dementia, according to Toronto experts. Nearly half of all dementia cases can be prevented or delayed. We asked doctors and researchers for the most effective ways to do it. Their answers might surprise you. And this article is written by Kevin Jang, Jiang, who is a science and life reporter. There was a time when cognitive decline seemed inevitable, a prophecy written in our genes. But now research suggests dementia can be just as much as a product of our environment and lifestyle. Sometimes prophecies can be avoided, and it can be as simple as adopting a few new habits. For instance, Doug Whitney was destined for dementia. The 75-year-old American inherited a rare genetic mutation in his PSEN2 gene, which almost always leads carriers to develop dementia by their early 50s. But Whitney remains mentally sharp and has no signs of cognitive decline decades after the age when many of his family members have developed dementia. While trying to figure out how Whitney escaped his fate, scientists discovered high levels of heat shock proteins in his brain, which appeared to prevent the onset of dementia. These likely accumulated over Whitney's 20 years in the Navy, working in sweltering ship engine rooms. Similarly, frequent sauna goers tend to have a lower risk of dementia. As Whitney demonstrated, dementia is far from inevitable. In fact, 45% of all cases can be delayed or prevented, according to the landmark 2024 Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention, and Care, and that's likely an underestimation. As Canada's population ages, the number of Canadians living with dementia is expected to rise 180% by 2050, underscoring the need for actionable solutions. We asked Toronto doctors and researchers for the most effective ways of avoiding cognitive decline. Some may surprise you. Exercise more. Exercise is the leading modifiable risk factor for dementia in Canada, according to the 2024 study. It's good for your heart, it's good for your brain, it's good for the blood flow, it decreases systemic inflammation, said Dr. Howard Chertkov, and that's CHERTKOW, co-scientific director of Baycrest Kimmel Family Center for Brain Health and Wellness in Toronto. It's almost magic. Canadians tend to be a sedentary people. Just 21% of youth met Canada's physical activity recommendations from 2022 to 2024, while adults spend an average 9.3 hours of each day sedentary. If you take anybody at any age and get them doing the Canadian recommendation of 150 minutes a week of aerobic exercise, you're going to decrease their dementia risk, Chertkov said. Address hearing and eyesight loss. Hearing loss is one of the most significant factors for dementia, according to the 2024 Lancet Commission. This likely has to do with the social isolation that can come with a reduced ability to communicate, experts say. Nearly double the amount of people with mild hearing loss will develop dementia compared to those with normal hearing, according to the Alzheimer's Society of the UK. People with moderate hearing loss are 3 times more at risk, and those with severe hearing loss can have almost 5 times the chance of cognitive decline. Addressing hearing loss can help delay the onset of dementia. Hearing interventions in older adults at risk of dementia slow down their cognitive decline by 48% over 3 years, found in a 2023 study. Vision loss is also a significant risk factor in dementia. Studies show people with vision loss are 50% more likely to develop dementia than those without. Connect with friends. Social isolation is a leading driver of dementia. Over time, chronic loneliness can be a major source of stress that raises the risk of cardiovascular and neurological disease as well as depression, another major risk factor for dementia. Being around friends, getting out of the house, being with people mitigates loneliness and social isolation, especially as you get older, Chertkov said. It also provides valuable cognitive stimulation. Sitting with your friends, arguing about politics, that stimulation that's stimulating your brain cells more than just sitting alone in the living room reading the Toronto Star. Take care of your heart and chronic conditions. The state of the heart and vascular health is closely tied to the brain. Having a stroke more than doubles the risk of developing dementia, while the Lancet Commission lists high blood pressure as a major modifiable risk factor for dementia. It's common knowledge that high levels of bad cholesterol can increase risk of heart attack and stroke, but it's also linked to dementia. LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol, has been implicated to be directly linked with the development of dementia even without causing a stroke, said Dr. Roger Wong, a clinical professor of geriatric medicine at the University of British Columbia. Foods that can raise levels of LDL cholesterol include fast food, fatty meats, full-fat dairy products like cheese, and bakery goods like donuts. Wong noted that long-term health conditions such as high blood sugar or diabetes can also be a risk factor in dementia. Properly managing these is important to your risk. Eat well. There is evidence that certain diets can help protect your heart and brain. The MIND diet, which stands for Mediterranean DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay, recommends focusing on leafy greens, berries, nuts, olive oil, and seafood while scaling back on red meat, butter and margarine, pastries, and fried foods. Researchers found sticking to the MIND diet reduced the rate of developing Alzheimer's disease by more than 50%, according to the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada. Even modest adherence to the diet led to a 35% reduction. Prioritize sleep. Sleep is critical for brain health. The brain activates its waste management system during deep sleep, flushing out toxins that accumulated during the day. These toxins are linked to numerous brain diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, the most common cause of dementia. Sleep deprivation is really toxic for the brain, said Dr. Marielle Norris, a staff internist and geriatrician at Sunnybrook Hospital and an associate professor of medicine at the University of Toronto. Obstructive sleep apnea is also associated with obesity. Both are independent risk factors, and together it amplifies the risk of dementia. A 2021 study from Harvard researchers found those who sleep fewer than 5 hours a night were twice as likely to develop dementia and twice as likely to die than those who slept 6 to 8 hours a night. Stop smoking and excessive drinking. Both smoking and excessive alcohol were flagged as dementia risk factors by the Lancet Commission. Studies show drinking more than 12 standard alcoholic beverages a week can increase dementia risk by 20%. The Canadian Centre for Substance Abuse and Addiction recommends consuming 2 or fewer standard drinks a week to avoid alcohol-related consequences. Around the globe, 14% of all Alzheimer's disease cases are potentially attributed to smoking tobacco, according to the World Health Organization. But within 10 years of quitting smoking, the risk of developing Alzheimer's may become equal to someone who has never smoked. Keep pursuing education. Poor education in early childhood years is a significant risk factor for dementia. It's well documented that the more years of education a person has, the lower their risk of cognitive impairment or dementia down the line. We can't travel back in time, but we can pursue further education at any time, whether that's pursuing a formal degree, gaining a new skill, or learning a second language. Even in middle age and later, going back to school, getting more education is beneficial. Chirkov said, by continuously challenging our brains and building new connections between brain cells, we're shoring up our cognitive reserve, a measure of how agile our brains are at pulling together disparate skills to solve new problems and challenges. This can later serve as a buffer against cognitive decline, helping stave off some symptoms of dementia. Find your purpose. Chirkov recommends taking up volunteering if possible, especially after retirement. This helps with social isolation, but it can also give a sense of purpose. This blends into a whole other category, which we don't know much about, Chirkov said. There is a spiritual element here. He linked purpose to a sense of meaning in your life, a sense of optimism. All of these themes seem to be part of our cognitive reserve, protecting people from dementia. And Kevin Jang is a Toronto-based science and health reporter for The Star, and you can reach him at his email, which is kjing @ THESTAR.ca. Our next article is under the business section, and it is an opinion article. And the title is 8 Ways to Make Money While You Sleep. And it's by Leslie Ann Scorgie, Scorgie, who is a contributing columnist. And Leslie Ann is Toronto-based personal finance columnist and a freelance contributing columnist for The Star. Longer days, lighter schedules, and just enough breathing room to think about what's next. Summer is a time to create space for yourself and learn about passive income, an often misunderstood yet curious concept of making money while you sleep. People assume passive income is low to no effort. It's not, though the name would suggest otherwise. It requires upfront effort, some level of financial investment, and ongoing maintenance. But when done right, it can create additional cash flow, and even long-term wealth. Here are 8 passive income ideas worth exploring. Rent out space you're not using. Whether it's your spare room, a basement, garage, condo parking spot, or even your driveway, unused space can generate steady income. Platforms like Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, it's Kijiji, Airbnb, and short-term rental sites make it easier than ever to test this out, especially during peak summer travel season. Before you head down this path, check your local bylaws so you don't accidentally rent space in a way you shouldn't. Rent out items you already own. Bikes, paddleboards, camping gear, tools, wedding decorations, home staging decor, baby gear like specialty strollers, and more can be rented out when you're not using them. The key is to price fairly, market the items where potential borrowers will be, online and even in the community, and protect your assets with deposits. Many people consider turning their cars into an income stream. They might rent it out, share it with someone else, or use it for advertising. Invest in dividend-paying stocks. Dividend stocks provide regular payouts simply for holding them. You can take the cash or reinvest it through a dividend reinvestment plan, which is DRIP, which compounds your returns over time. It's one of the more accessible ways to build passive income gradually. There are managed funds that do this well, reinvesting the returns and rebalancing automatically. Many investors focus their entire investment strategy on this premise, reinvesting what they earn. Explore simple, set and serve businesses. Ideas like vending machines, car washes, or laundromats require more upfront investment but can operate with relatively low day-to-day involvement once established. The trick with these businesses is to locate them well, where a ready market exists and where you'll be able to secure the proper approvals from the city. If you keep on top of maintenance, the equipment should last a long time. Online courses, coaching, self-published, ebooks, and product sales. If you have expertise people are willing to pay for, and you know this to be true because you've tested the market, consider packaging it into an online course or an ebook. The upfront work can be significant, But once written and built, your advertising funnels are set up and social media strategy ironed out. It can generate ongoing income with minimal updates. Even niche topics can perform well if they solve a specific problem or serve a defined audience. Sell products online. From physical goods to digital downloads, online marketplaces make it easier than ever to reach buyers. Platforms like Amazon or Etsy can handle much of the logistics, allowing you to focus on sourcing and positioning your products. These platforms can truly open the door for artists in particular to find a market for their work. Build or buy a profitable website or Substack subscription. Websites can generate income through product sales, affiliate links, or advertising. If building one from scratch feels overwhelming, you can purchase an existing site that already produces revenue and optimize it further. Plenty of creators are flocking to Substack to produce sellable content through the embedded subscription functionality. Plenty are tacking on podcasts and selling advertising. Invest in real estate wisely. Rental properties can generate both monthly cash flow and long-term appreciation, but this is far from a passive in the early stages. Run the numbers carefully. Review them with a qualified financial planner and real estate expert. It's also key to understand the tax implications of owning real estate, especially if it's foreign property, and be realistic about the time commitment. If you're planning to DIY property management, this can be a lot of work to manage the tenants in the property. The best way to break into passive income is to choose one idea that fits your lifestyle, skills, and financial situation and test it thoughtfully this summer. Once it's working and creating cash flow for you, move on to the next idea and then the next. By layering the multiple streams of income, you'll start to create flexibility, diversified income, and long-term financial goals. Our final article for today is under the life section. Title is, He Came to Toronto to be a mariachi star, but ended up homeless. Then something wonderful happened. After being forced to wash dishes and sleep in the park, Diego Arturo Munoz, M-U-N-O-Z, is now performing at festivals across the country. And this article is written by Andreas Valenzuela, Valenzuela, who is a staff reporter. Lured by the promise of a lucrative salary, housing, and meals, Diego Arturo Munoz left his home in Mexico to pursue a future as a mariachi in Toronto. The owners of a Latin American restaurant had convinced him that mariachi music was gaining popularity across the GTA. Born in Guadalajara, Munoz, 23, always had his mariachi group and steady work as a musician. Yet against his parents' advice, he packed up his finest suits and a hand-embroidered golden sombrero, boarding a flight to Canada, hoping to build an international career. When I arrived, everything changed, Munoz says. The restaurant owners told me I would be washing dishes instead. They put me in a house with several other workers. I practically had to beg for food. The treatment was disrespectful. That's when I realized the path ahead wouldn't be easy. His experience reflects concerns raised by migrant worker advocates about employer-dependent work arrangements in Canada. Munoz left the restaurant just days after arriving. He took a couple of buses from Scarborough to downtown, thinking it would be easier to spend the night inside Union Station, but a security guard kicked him out. A wooden bench in a small park across the street became his bed for several nights. One morning, guided by his musical instincts and the urgent need for income, he bought a second-hand speaker and microphone. Clad in his black suit with gold appliques, his vest adorned with horses, spurs, and delicate chains, Munoz began to sing in the streets surrounding the CN Tower, downtown parks, and Kensington Market. Those were long, grueling days that felt eternal, he said. but I always wore my mariachi suit with pride and a sense of responsibility. It was more about it was more than just collecting coins to survive. It was about representing my culture. Over time, his street performances connected him with people who offered support, housing, and food. One day, a Mexican couple approached him while he was performing and offered him some money. They chatted for a few minutes, and after learning of his situation, they offered to host him in their apartment until he could save enough money to pay for a room. It was a pure and selfless act of solidarity, he says. From there, Munoz approached restaurant owners to get more paying gigs, performing, and built a social media presence as well as a traveling mariachi. His rise comes as Latin music continues gaining visibility in Canada, including the Juno Awards, introduction this year of a Latin Music Recording of the Year category. He understood that making his way in the local music scene would depend on him, so he decided to act as his own manager and publicist. And in this way, he began to make a name for himself, initially within the Latin America community and at small events. At first, I thought it would be impossible, but in the end, wearing this suit always motivated me to keep going. I must honor what mariachi represents and what our culture means. Today, 2 years later, he performs weekly as residents, event halls, and festivals across Toronto. His talent has earned him a special permit from the Mexican Council to participate in cultural activities. It's taken him beyond the GTA, performing in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Montreal, sometimes as a soloist, other times with a full band or accompanied by traditional Mexican dancers. I feel like I didn't choose Toronto, Munoz says. Toronto chose me. And Andres Valenzuela, Valencuela, is a staff photographer and videographer with the Toronto Star. And his email is AVALENZUELA at symbol THESTAR.ca. And you have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star May 18th, 2026 issue. Your reader has been Judy, that's me, and it has been such a pleasure and honor to read to all of you. Please take wonderful care of your amazing selves and have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening.